Hello, this is Claus Jensen presenting my second warm-up video before the Anand Gelfand match, which starts off this Thursday. And this is also quite an old game. From Hoogovens tournament 1996. Hoogovens is better known as Vacancy, Chorus or Tata Steel Chess. Same tournament with different names over time. And in this game Anand is white and Gelfand is black, and we have a close Sicilian e4, c5, knight c3. Gelfand plays d6, f4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, and bishop c4. And in a pure Grand Prix attack with an early knight c6 from black, the bishop usually goes to b5, but Anand puts his bishop on c4. Knight c6, d3, e6, castles, knight ge7, queen e1, ready to transfer the queen to the king side, h6, bishop b3, a6. And what had been played in this position at that time was a4, clamping down b5 for the moment and giving the bishop the a2 square if knight a5 is to come from black. But Anand found a new move here, played a new move here, and the move he played was e5. And there are some. This move has some interesting features compared to this a4 move. First and foremost, e5 puts pressure on d6, and it gives his knight the square e4, and it doesn't waste time on prophylaxis on the queen side. And the main negative aspect of e5 is that it practically sacks a pawn, and that black gets the square f5 for his knight, and Gelfand in the game occupied this square immediately, but he could have opted for d5 here, and this was surely an option to take away the e4 square for Anand's knight. And this move has indeed been tried in some games, but without too much luck though. Normally white could play knight e2, knight g3, and then c3, d4, or you could play knight d1, knight to e3 and still push the pawns. But knight f5 came, and with king h1, Anand removes his king from possible checks from the black knights. There could easily be a check in some lines, because there surely is a knight, black knight is going to d4. Knight f to d4, and this is already a very interesting position. Knight e4, this interesting move is a pawn sack and adds to the complications and adds to the pressure on d6. And note here that knight takes b3 here doesn't work because of knight takes d6 check, and also a move like d5 doesn't work because of knight d6 check. So the d6 square is a problem for black. But Gelfand played knight takes f3 here, and then Anand has to take the knight, and then d takes e5, f takes e5, and knight takes e5. And now Anand has sacked a pawn, and in compensation he has the f-file, he has a safer king, and there are a few holes in the black position, particularly d6 and f6. And rook f1 was played from Anand. And this is a critical point of the game, and we're only at move 15. Anand has sacked a pawn, and Gelfand has to decide how to defend his position without running too much risk. And one possibility was castle. This looks very obvious, but it fails to bishop takes h6. And after bishop takes, then knight f6 check, and white can take advantage of one of the weak squares in the black position to win back the pawn by tactical means, because then after king g7, then queen takes e5, and Anand has won back the pawn and has a superior position. So castle doesn't work. So a logical move here could be queen c7, because it defends the knight on e5, it defends the pawn on c5, and it's preparing castle, because this tactic doesn't work now. And after a line like bishop e3, b6, defending c5, and also preparing bishop b7, I think this should be playable for black. But in view of this tactic on h6, Gelfand played g5 here. Anand played queen g3 and Gelfand castled as planned, and his top priority has been king safety. So now Anand can take the pawn on c5, and knight takes c5 was of course a possibility. b6, knight e4, f5, knight f2, after which black seems to be fine. But Anand didn't capture the pawn on c5. He had a totally different idea in mind. And the idea was to sack a bishop by playing bishop takes g5 here. Anand simply tries to punish Gelfand's weakening of his kingside by sacking his bishop. H takes, knight g6, and rook a e1. And it's interesting how Anand sacked his bishop more on intuition and feeling rather than on any concrete calculations. He simply felt that his active pieces and vulnerable black king would give him compensation. Even if the sack isn't correct, this is great stuff. Queen e7 followed, and now comes the amazing rook f5. You don't see a rook lift like this every day, and e5 here is not possible because too much pressure on f7. So rook takes f7, rook takes, bishop takes f7 with a double attack on the king and the knight. So Gelfand comes up with best defense, which is bishop f6 here. And now it's perhaps not so easy to see how Anand should continue, but he simply continues by sacking another piece. Knight takes e6 here. And now bishop takes e6 doesn't work. Rook takes, f takes, queen takes g6. And now we can see how the rook is lifted to the h file. Best defense in this position was actually rook e8, but it's not that easy to find such a move. In the game, Gelfand played f takes e6, and then came rook takes e6, and again bishop takes e6, queen takes, queen g7, bishop e6 check. Again we see this rook lift in action. So after rook takes e6, Gelfand instead played king g7. And then Anand grabbed the queen and exchanged the rooks and played h4. And Gelfand has rook, bishop and knight for the queen, but his pieces are disorganized and Anand has 3 extra pawns. And the 2 pawns on the king side, they are not stoppable. So Gelfand resigned in this position. I hope you enjoyed this second warm-up video in which Anand sacked a few pieces to put Gelfand under pressure. And Gelfand missed the best defense, which was rook e8, and Anand won in style. And let's hope to see something similar in their upcoming match. And let's hope you visit my chef's website at clausjensen.com. Bye bye for now.